You're now watching the Danny Mac Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Welcome back into the Danny Mac Podcast. I'm Dan McNeil on the BetRivers Podcast Network. It's been a little while. It feels like way too long since I've talked football with you, but here we go as we continue to wait for the NFL schedules to come out. And Bears rookie camp right around the corner, the mini camps. It's all very exciting. And a pleasure to have the company for the second time since I've been doing these podcasts of the Punky QB, former Bears quarterback, a Super Bowl champion, Jim McMahon, joining me today. Jimmy Mac, I hope you're up and about a little bit better than when I talked with you last season. How's the hoof? Are you getting around okay?
It seems like it's coming around a little bit. I'm here in Chicago actually right now. I'll be working with a chiropractor this week every day, and he's made some great progress already in the first 2 days. So I'm hoping to be walking by at least another month. It's been 2.5 years so far.
Yeah, it's been about 2.5 years since I've swung a golf club in earnest. Is it a nerve issue, a muscle issue? What's the drill specifically? Because 60-year-old guys have to know these things.
Yeah, well, it was after the infection, and then the I had 7 skin grafts in 7 months, and the skin grafts just it wasn't taking, and it took 7 months to finally to heal the big wound on the top of my foot. But the problem was it sat there, it didn't move for almost a year, and it just calcified, and the joint itself is very arthritic. There's not a whole lot of room between the bones, and they might even be fused by now because they haven't moved. And so now it's just tough trying to break up all the scar tissue and going through the pain of that. It's not fun, and just trying to get some more movement. My foot does not go up and down very well. I can't point my toes down or up. I can go a little bit side to side, but that's been the work of the chiropractor this week, is to try to break up as much scar tissue as possible, and then hopefully get the nerves and everything regenerated, and because there's a lot of feeling down there. That's the reason they won't cut it off, and they said I had too much feeling, but I said, yeah, but the feeling's pain. I'd rather just cut it off and not deal with it. But there ain't nobody chasing me anymore. I don't need to run. I just want to be walking without pain. And they're pretty cool looking.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have to cut my toenails.
I'd love to see it, but we'd probably have all kinds of technical issues getting restarted with cameras and whatnot. Yeah, these are the fun things we talk about when you get to be in our age group, guys in their 60s and guys who remember the 85 Bears. I want to hit you with some of that in just a little bit. And I didn't know whether to start this podcast with talking about guys who take good care of their hygiene below the man parts or an obituary. Let's do Jay Hilgenberg and have a laugh. I would love to see him stay as dry as he did for you under the buttocks playing golf in that Arizona heat. Have you ever had him out there to test his moisture level in Maricopa County?
No, I haven't seen Hilge in quite a while, other than some pictures. I guess he must have been in Kansas City a while back. Andy Reid sent me a picture of them together. And he looks great. Hell, he probably weighs less than I do now. I told him I wouldn't mind taking a snap from him now. He doesn't have that big, fat, pimply ass anymore. So
he's tight too. He's been lifting and jumping rope.
Yeah, he looks great. Yeah.
Yeah. Screw him. But it's a great story about the contrast between playing with Jay in Chicago and then when you go to San Diego. Tell my listeners and viewers on YouTube the story of the rookie center who caused you to burn a timeout.
Oh God. Well, that was I was back in 1989. I was with the Chargers. I don't know. It was the second, third, fourth game of the year. I don't even remember. But and in San Diego, we did not have the shotgun formation. The Dan Henning, our head coach, had just come from Washington, where Joe Gibbs did not use the shotgun. He didn't like it, didn't believe in it. So we didn't have that in our offense. And so he's going to start a rookie center. I'm not going to say his name, but he was a hell of a player. And he was also on the kickoff return team. So we're getting the opening kickoff. And the ball gets kicked off. Nothing really happens. We're getting the ball on the 20. And so I'm running out to the field. And the center grabs me before I got in the huddle. He says, "Hey, man, I'm sorry, but if your hands start to smell, it's because I just shit my pants." And I went, "Timeout." And I went over. The game hadn't even started yet. So Henning was, up in arms and yelling and this and that. And I said, this is exactly why we need the shotgun formation, coach. Because I said, I'm not sticking my hands in there until he cleans it up a little bit. And so, so he didn't even leave the field, or he left the field, but didn't leave the stadium. He was just stood on the sidelines with trainers around him as he tried to clean himself off. But yeah, my hands stunk for about a month after that game.
I love the way you quote him. If your hands start to like there's any debate whether they will, if they start.
No, every time, when he came back in the game, every time the ball hit my hand, I get splattered. I'd have freckles, shit freckles. It wasn't good.
Yurko, my former radio partner on ESPN, and I think you teamed with him briefly in Green Bay, told me a funny story about. Yeah, I thought so. Bill Moss, late in the game, and it was freezing at Lambeau, decided to piss himself. The game went overtime, and his pants froze up. And Moss won't talk about it publicly. Why? I don't know why. That's a great story. I'd be proud of that, man.
Yeah, people don't hear those kind of stories usually.
Well, there's a reason to read my book. I like to take it to the toilet. It'll be out by the time the season starts. And it's timely, too, because we're coming up on now 40 years since the Bears' last championship. This fall's the 25th anniversary of when Walter Payton passed away, and there's a lot in my book about that. But also the optimism going into camp. The draft was very exciting, Jimmy Mack. Caleb Williams, the number one pick out of USC. Lots of hope for this guy to be a stud for a long time. And the wide receiver, Rome Odunze, I know you don't watch a ton of college football. I don't either. But it's easy to understand why Bears fans are doing cartwheels. They haven't won dick yet, but this looks like they have a terrific foundation, doesn't it?
Well, from what I heard, I didn't follow the draft. I've been hearing people talking about Caleb. I've never seen him play. But it really doesn't matter who all your skilled people are if you don't have a good offensive line. I don't know how good the Bears line is, but without a good offensive line, it doesn't matter. What the QB is going to struggle. The receivers will be mad because they won't be able to get the ball because the QB's on his ass. Everything starts up front, and until they get a good, solid offensive line, you're not going to win games. When I first got to Chicago, 82, 83, we were brutal. Our offensive line was, struggling. And then, 84, we picked it up and the rest was history after that. But those first 2 years, man, it was not fun.
Yeah, Bill Tobin, who recently passed away, did a hell of a job building that offensive line for a decade. Found Mark Bortz in Iowa, an 8th-round pick. Keith Van Horn, a little bit earlier, first-rounder. Hildy's a free agent.
Yeah, Jim Finks.
Yeah, Jim Finks did. Jim Finks got a lot of credit, and he deserved it. But I thought Bill deserved a little bit more than he got. I don't know if you.
Well, they drafted Mark Bortz as a defensive lineman. Mm-hmm. And that's still, I think, the best move they ever made is putting Bortzy over the offensive line side of the ball because he played offense like a defensive player. He was aggressive, and our O-line didn't put up with any crap. They didn't lose many fights, those guys. I can't remember losing one.
The wide receiver out of Washington was on the radio in Chicago the day after the draft, and Parkins and Spiegel told him that the Bears' career receiving record was held by Johnny Morris, who last played in 67, 5,069 yards, and he didn't believe them. And it is hard to believe. That's the lowest total. It's crazy, isn't it, when you think about it? As long as this franchise has been around, for them to be so low in 2 of the 3 most important offensive categories, receiving yards, both in a season and a career, and the same thing with passers.
Well, Chicago's never been a passing football team. They've always been, who's your middle linebacker and who's your running back? That's basically Chicago Bear football. And, when I first got there, I was very disappointed with our offense. It was run, throw on 3rd and long. And it was no fun for me coming from a school where I got to throw it pretty much every down. And I used to argue with Mike Ditka all the time. I said, why can't we throw it to Walter out of the backfield? Get him away from all the bullshit. Give me some credit. I knew what I was doing. I understood defense. I knew how to read a defense. And if I saw blitz, I could, audible to a simple little halfback option route and there's nobody in the league, linebacker wise, that could cover Walter. I said, give me credit. I can throw it 7 yards downfield to, once he beats the backer. And, but he was a little too stubborn. We're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. And so I had to deal with that for 7 years.
But you didn't, though. You changed plays and you did what you wanted to win. How long did it take before you felt comfortable enough to do that and say, "Fuck him. I'm gonna change this up because this won't work against this front"?
I did it my first start, my rookie year. I mean, we were playing Detroit. I still remember plain as day. I mean, it was 3rd and long, and everybody knew 3rd and long we're going to run a sweep with Walter. Sure enough, they had 9 guys on one side of the field waiting for the sweep, and I was struggling to call the play because, from Little League until I got to the pros, even numbers were to the right. But in Chicago, even numbers were to the left. And because Ditka had just come from Dallas, where Tom Landry's vision was from the defensive side of the ball. So his even was the other way around. And so I was surprised I even got it off before the 30-second clock because I couldn't figure out a number. I just wanted to run a simple off-tackle play to my left side because they only had 2 guys there. And so when I finally remembered, I said 34. And 34 wasn't even the game plan that week. Why? Who knows? But it was just a simple off-tackle play to Matsui, weak side. And it's a play you've run 1,000 times in training camp. So everybody knew the play. But I remember Noah Jackson was my left guard, and he looked up at me, and he says, 34? What the hell's 34? Because it wasn't in the plan that week, right? And I said, just Bootsy has to block the guy in front of you. And so I think it was 3rd and 7. I think we got 9 yards. And as we're coming back to the huddle, Bootsy says, "Hey, youngster, you got any more surprises for me?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Just keep your ears open." I said, "I'm not running into that." I said, and then Walter grabbed. This is the only time Walter talked to me on the field. He says, "Hey, man, I don't want to run through that either. Keep doing what you're doing." And so I guess they never changed plays before I got here. But it doesn't make any sense to run into 9 guys. I mean, it's just common sense to me.
And the guy you took the baton from, and that's the obit we got to do, Bob Avellini, drafted in the 6th round out of Maryland in 75. He had a good sense of humor over the years. I don't know how well you got to know Avellini, but he took a beating from people, and he took it well. He had a real self-deprecating sense of humor, and I guess you have to when you throw 33 career touchdowns and 69 picks. But Bob died at the age of 70 recently after a tough battle with pancreatic cancer. A reminder of a bad era, but a really good dude. I like Bob. Did you get to know him much?
Well, yeah, I played with Bob for 2 years. So, yeah, I got to know him pretty well. We played golf, too, in the off season. And typical New Yorker.
Yeah.
People going to give you crap. He's going to give it right back. And when I first got there, I was actually kind of amazed that he didn't look like an athlete at all, if you remember. I mean, body wise but he was a tough sucker. I'll tell you that. I remember the first game. I think we were up in Detroit, and he got high load because I used to tease him about, he used to wear that face mask that was really close to his chin and his face. And I said, "Hey man, don't you ever get popped?" And he goes, "Rook, I've been here 9 years and then this and that." So I said, "Okay." And then after he got high load and came up, he was missing like 3 teeth and his lip was hanging off. He had bloody nose, and he went in and got stitched up and went back in the game. I said, "I'll give you credit, dude. You're a tough son of a bitch."
Gary Fensick told me about that game years ago, and we revisited it recently when you guys got on the plane. Gary says he looks at, he goes, "This is goddamn embarrassing. This is our quarterback." I guess Dennis Lick was a scratch, and Jiggets played tackle, and that made Bubba Baker want to play for the Lions. That's it, because he was going to sit with an illness. That's how Gary remembers. He goes, "Oh, Jiggets is playing tackle. Maybe I'll suit up."
Yeah, like I said, those first 2 years, our O-line was not very good.
I love that Caleb Williams is a flamboyant dude. I kind of love the fact that he comes in here with a little life experience with his $10+ million in career earnings already. He should have some additional maturity because of that. Social media, people want to be pissed at this and that. Some of the pushback because he paints his nails or dances to the beat of his own drum. Who cares, man? Be who you are and produce, play hard, and people will frickin' love you, right?
Yeah, well, that's why I had to do a little video for the Bears for draft day, and that's all I said. I said, look, just one piece of advice. I said, you play hard in Chicago, they'll love you. And I said, if you play hard and you win it all, they're going to love you forever. And I said, my teammates and I have been proving that. It's been almost 40 years, and they're still talking about us.
And for those of us who remember, yeah, there's reason to. The Rolling Stones and shoulder pads, as I've said for years. For those of you who don't remember 85, believe everything you've heard about it. And as I gather information for this book, and ask guys about relationships as they've changed over the years, I found, Jim, that a lot of the bitterness has dissipated. Some of it hasn't. But I think the name that gets the most mixed reaction when I ask people for how they feel about teammates or coaches is Mike Ditka. How have your feelings changed about him? What do you think of when you hear the name Mike Ditka?
Well, I mean, he was the coach when I first got there. I mean, I thought we got along pretty well early on. But, I've said this from day one. I would have loved to play with him. He was a great football player. Played the position, and I think he was the first tight end to go in the Hall of Fame. Just a great player, and he played the game the way it was supposed to be played. And had he ever been in my huddle, I think he would have understood me better, because he would have figured out sooner that I knew what the hell I was doing. But, those last couple of years were pretty tough. 86, 87, 88, especially 86, because, I hurt my shoulder the first game of the season. I had no labrum at all. My arm was coming in and out of the socket every time I moved. I kept trying to play. I kept telling them that what was happening, and the doctor said, "Oh, it couldn't be happening because you know how painful that is." I said, "Yeah, it happens 100 times a day. Hurts like hell." And I wouldn't practice much, and then guys on the defense, or not guys, mostly Dan Hampton would be pissed off that I wasn't practicing. And I said, my arm doesn't work. I don't know what the hell's wrong. The doctor said there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm telling you that there's something definitely wrong. And so I think I played 6 games that year, and they shot it up every game, and I had a shitload of pain pills to get through it. And it wasn't getting any better, and it would never have gotten better. Had I had surgery right after that first game, all the bad mouthing stuff that went on in 86 would not have happened. They would have understood, yeah, he had a problem, he needed surgery. But I kept trying to play. And what really pissed me off is that, in 84, I was trying to play with a third of my kidney torn off, and against the Raiders. And,
yep.
I didn't understand why they were questioning me now. I mean, I said, look, if I can play, I'm going to be out there. I'll do anything I can. I'll take whatever I have to. I'll shoot whatever I got to shoot in me, but I want to play. And to have that negative feedback from him, and then Dick had picked up on it. And, those last couple of years were rough.
The two Mikes, as Keith Van Horn explained it to me, the reason you were traded to the Chargers, McCaskey and Ditka, they wanted you in the weight room more than the golf course. I guess it's lacerated kidneys or something quarterbacks desire. And Charles Martin, that's something every quarterback dreams about. It's your fault, McMahon. And Hampton, as recently as 10 years ago, I saw a documentary on the Fog Bowl, and he said we had a quarterback who didn't always play. When's he going to let it go? I like Dan, but come on, dude.
Yeah, I don't listen to it anymore. I don't really care anymore. I haven't cared since I left there. So people that were around, people in the offense, they knew what was going on. They knew I had a problem, and I gave it everything I had. And then finally, when I finally went to a real doctor out in L.A., Frank Jobe, when we had that right after the Charles Martin incident, which happens to be the problem I'm having with my brain now, is because of that hit. It wasn't really much of my shoulder was already gone, but when he threw me on the ground, the side of right here hit the ground, and that's been causing the problems ever since. But yeah, it was a tough deal, but.
Well, watching these playoff games from the 80s, it's easier to to see things as they really are when you widen the focus and years later. And I push back way harder than I ever would have years ago when people use the phrase, they only won one. The fucking Giants in 86 were good. The Redskins were good. Philadelphia in the Fog Bowl kicked your guys' asses for 3 hours, but guys were dropping balls and they had touchdowns called back. The NFC was a really tough league. And I forgot to mention Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. They were pretty good too. It's hard to win a championship, isn't it?
You know, the NFC was tough back then. I mean, like you said, Washington, we couldn't figure out how to beat Washington. Or they figured out how to beat us. Joe Gibbs figured out we got to block 8 guys and just run 2-man routes and beat us. And like we were so predictable on offense, like I've been saying, I mean, they figured out how to beat us. And you know, Washington couldn't beat the Giants, but we could beat the Giants. I mean, and then Frisco was always, always going to be in the mix as well. But in '86, we still had the best record in the league. We're 14-2. We went to 3 NFC championship games in 5 years. I mean, it's not like we went away after we won the Super Bowl. We just couldn't win at home in the playoffs, which is, you know, you work all year to get that advantage, and then it doesn't turn out to be an advantage. And plus, we laid an egg in the playoffs.
Yep. Still a great time and always good catching up. I want to tell you listeners, Jim has opened a brand new memorabilia website, jimmymac9.com. Check it out as he continues to dip his toes in business waters. He's got ganj companies going on, signings every now and again, appearances. Hope you're happy, man. I know a lot of Chicago people are pissed because you can't get up and live the life you want to live and play golf and relax, but be happy. That's my wish for you this spring, Mac.
Well, I'm always happy. I'm frustrated at times, but I'm happy to be alive. My junior high teacher said I wouldn't make it to 20, so I've tripled that. So, things are going great. I've got 6 grandkids. All my 4 kids are doing great, and I've got 6 grandkids now. 1 on the way, so one more coming in September. So it's life's been good. As long as my kids and family are healthy. My folks just turned 88 in April. Both of them are still breathing, and they're struggling a little bit, but they're alive and happy. And so, it's life goes on, man. I played 15 years. I've been out almost 30 now. So it's it's crazy how fast it goes.
Why would your teacher say that to you? You won't live to be 20. Sniffing glue? What the hell would a teacher say that?
That was part of it.
I always said you were football Jim Morrison, and I'm being proven correct. You are the Jim Morrison of the NFL, aren't you?
I had some, I was a little bit of a hoodlum when I was up until 12 years old. And then my dad kicked me off his own baseball team because it caught me smoking cigarettes. And so I tried to turn my life around at 13 and 14 and then carry on. But I was not heading in the right direction when I was a youngster.
Jim, thanks for the visit. Enjoy the day. Have fun, man.
All right, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Jim McMahon, and that's jimmymac9.com for his new memorabilia shop. And it's always fun to catch up with him. Thanking Sam Michael, my executive producer, Randy Merkin, who handles the guests. Adam Delavitt runs the show at the BetRivers Podcast Network. Back next week with lots more NFL, and former Bulls head coach Doug Collins is right around the corner on the podcast. Have a great weekend. I'm Dan McMahon.